Creflo Dollar, once hailed as one of the most powerful voices in modern American Christianity, now faces a storm that no sermon could prepare him for. From private jets and luxury mansions to lawsuits, financial scrutiny, and whispers of betrayal within his own church, the empire he built is crumbling right before the world's eyes. You won't believe what happened next and how one decision could change everything for the World Changers Church International forever. Today, we're diving deep into the rise and shocking fall of Creflo Dollar's World Changers Church International. For decades, Dollar was more than a pastor. He was a symbol of faith, wealth, and influence. Millions followed his every word, donating generously to his vision of prosperity and spiritual guidance. But behind the polished sermons and billion-dollar empire, cracks were forming. Cracks that few outside the inner circle could see. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden truths that the headlines didn't tell you, the financial controversies, the internal conflicts, and the personal choices that brought one of the most powerful pastors in America to a crossroads. You won't believe what insiders reveal about the church's operations and what could be the turning point in Dollar's legacy. Stay with me, because this is where it gets unbelievable, and it's a story that shakes the very foundation of what we thought we knew about faith, money, and power. Creflo Dollar didn't start with a private jet or a multi-million-dollar church building. In the 1980s, he was a young, ambitious preacher in Atlanta, preaching to small congregations with a vision that would eventually transform him into one of the most recognizable faces in American Christianity. Dollar's charisma was undeniable. His voice carried authority, hope, and a promise that faith could translate into tangible success, something that resonated deeply with his growing audience. World Changers Church International started modestly, with a few hundred members in a small storefront, but Dollar's message of prosperity and divine favor struck a chord. Tithes and offerings grew exponentially, and soon he began acquiring properties, expanding into multiple campuses, and even opening international branches. Dollar's rise was meteoric, and for many, it seemed unstoppable. By the 2000s, WCCI had become a symbol of wealth and influence in the faith world. Luxury cars, private jets, and sprawling mansions were no longer rumors. They were a public testament to the prosperity gospel Dollar preached. Followers were drawn in by the allure of success promised through faith, and Dollar was careful to maintain the narrative. His wealth was proof of God's favor, a living testament to what believers could achieve. But behind the scenes, the pressure to maintain this empire was mounting. The more the church expanded, the more scrutiny followed. Critics began asking questions that no one in the congregation wanted to hear. Was this truly about faith, or had WCCI become a business empire in pastors' clothing? And what happened behind the closed doors of Dollar's inner circle? Little did anyone know. The first cracks were appearing, setting the stage for a collapse that would shock followers and critics alike. And it all started with the church's finances, a story that's far more complicated and dramatic than most headlines reveal. By the time World Changers Church International reached its peak, the scale of its operations was staggering. Dollar's church wasn't just a place of worship, it was a multi-million-dollar enterprise, with thousands of members attending weekly services, countless donations pouring in, and a global following. The church's financial machinery was enormous. But with immense wealth comes scrutiny and controversy. The first major storm came in the form of questions about Dollar's lavish lifestyle. Headlines began to surface about his private jets, luxury cars, and multi-million-dollar mansions. Critics and investigative journalists asked what many in the church were hesitant to voice. Was this wealth truly the result of God's favor, or had the lines between ministry and personal enrichment blurred? Then came the lawsuits. One of the most infamous cases involved a dispute over the ownership of a private jet purchased by the church. The legal battle drew national attention, putting Dollar and WCCI under a microscope. Court documents revealed layers of complexity, how funds were allocated, who had access to church finances, and whether certain expenditures could be justified as ministry-related. Even more shocking were internal allegations from former employees and members. Whistleblowers came forward claiming that church finances were not always transparent. Some reported feeling pressured to give beyond their means, while others hinted at internal conflicts over financial decisions. The whispers of mismanagement and favoritism within Dollar's inner circle began to spread like wildfire. Despite these controversies, Dollar defended himself publicly, asserting that his lifestyle was fully justified and that all expenditures aligned with his ministry's mission. But the damage had been done. Media outlets and social platforms exploded with criticism, leaving many longtime followers questioning their faith and the integrity of the institution they had supported for decades. This chapter of Dollar's story marked the first real cracks in the facade. What had once seemed like untouchable success was now clouded by doubt, suspicion, and the beginnings of a very public unraveling. And here's the mini cliffhanger leading into Chapter 3. But while financial scrutiny rattled the church from the outside, the real drama was unfolding within, a series of internal conflicts and betrayals that would push WCCI to the brink of collapse. While the world was fixated on Creflo Dollar's wealth and the lawsuits surrounding World Changers Church International, a much deeper, more personal drama was brewing behind the walls of the ministry. The cracks weren't just financial, they were human. Leadership disputes, personal rivalries, and a growing divide between Dollar and some of his closest associates began to threaten the very foundation of the church he had built. Former insiders describe a once tightly knit leadership team slowly fracturing under the pressures of fame, money, and public scrutiny. Disagreements over strategic decisions, financial priorities, and even theological interpretations sparked tension in meetings that were supposed to be about unity and vision. Some long-term staff members reportedly felt sidelined or ignored, while others began to question the moral and ethical decisions being made at the top. Perhaps the most damaging of these internal conflicts were whispers of betrayal, allegations that trusted leaders were undermining Dollar or quietly leveraging church resources for personal gain. Rumors spread of secret deals, conflicts over property, and attempts to influence congregants away from leadership decisions. These betrayals didn't just hurt the church internally, they leaked out, fueling speculation in the media and on social platforms. Even Dollar himself wasn't immune to pressure. Sources close to him describe moments of isolation and intense stress, where he had to make decisions that could either preserve the church or destroy it. Friends and advisors reportedly warned him that some of the people he trusted most could turn against him if the church faltered. It became a high-stakes chess game, with reputations, millions of dollars, and spiritual authority all hanging in the balance. All of this tension came to a head in a series of public controversies and unexpected resignations. Key pastors and staff members left the ministry, citing irreconcilable differences with leadership or discomfort with financial and operational decisions. These departures sent shockwaves through the congregation and the broader Christian community. Followers who had long admired Dollar's vision were left wondering, how could an institution so carefully cultivated from the ground up suddenly show signs of collapse? And yet perhaps the most heartbreaking consequence of these internal conflicts wasn't the lawsuits or media scrutiny. It was the erosion of trust. Congregants who had once poured their lives and savings into the church began to question not just the leadership, but the very message they had been taught. For many, faith and loyalty collided with doubt and disillusionment, creating a crisis that Dollar's sermons alone could not repair. By the mid-2010s, the rise of social media, investigative journalism, and an increasingly skeptical public made it impossible for the World Changers Church International to operate without scrutiny. Dollar's financial controversies, previously reported in select news outlets, were now viral topics across Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But what truly sent shockwaves through his empire were the scandals that penetrated beyond financial concerns and into the very heart of his leadership and credibility. One of the most explosive controversies involved allegations of misuse of church funds for personal luxuries. While Dollar maintained that his expenditures, from multi-million-dollar jets to lavish homes, were ministry-related, critics argued that they represented a blatant disconnect between the teachings of humility in Scripture and the lifestyle being showcased to his congregation. Headlines were relentless, calling into question not just the ethics of his decisions, but the very nature of the prosperity gospel he preached. At the same time, former employees and insiders began speaking out publicly. Some claimed that they had witnessed decisions that prioritized personal enrichment over the church's mission. Others alleged that key figures in Dollar's inner circle had attempted to manipulate funds or influence decisions for personal gain. These revelations were amplified by viral videos and interviews, giving the public a sense that the collapse wasn't just financial, it was moral and organizational. And then came the lawsuits that shook the church to its core. While some were minor disputes over property or administrative matters, others carried serious implications. One high-profile case questioned whether Dollar had misrepresented financial reports to maintain his public image. Media outlets framed it as a potential unraveling of one of the largest churches in America, and the congregation began asking difficult questions. How could a church so powerful falter so publicly? Where had leadership failed? Perhaps most damaging of all were the internal betrayals that became public. Former pastors and associates gave interviews detailing disagreements that had escalated into full-blown disputes, exposing leadership tensions for the world to see. Congregants who once saw Dollar as infallible began to question his decisions, and the church that had once been a symbol of divine prosperity now faced reputational collapse. The emotional toll was visible everywhere. Members who had invested not just money, but faith and trust, felt betrayed. Families who had followed Dollar's teachings for decades grappled with doubt, and yet, even in the face of such exposure, Dollar continued to preach, defending his record and insisting that critics misunderstood the nature of ministry and success. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Behind closed doors, an internal investigation revealed financial inconsistencies, strategic missteps, and leadership decisions that, if publicized, could irreversibly tarnish Dollar's image and legacy. The empire he had built over decades, the foundation of his influence and the source of his power, was now teetering on the edge of collapse. By the late 2010s, Creflo Dollar's once unshakable empire faced challenges that went far beyond lawsuits and scandals. The combination of public scrutiny, internal betrayals, and mounting financial controversies had begun to erode the foundation of World Changers Church International. Followers who had once worshipped with unshakable faith now faced difficult questions. Was the man they admired flawed? Was the institution they invested in falling apart? The final blow came in the form of a series of high-profile exposés. Investigative reports revealed internal financial mismanagement, highlighting a complex web of expenditures, questionable allocations, and decisions that appeared to prioritize luxury over ministry. For many, this was confirmation of what they had long suspected, that the prosperity gospel preached from WCCI's pulpit masked deeper problems within the church. Simultaneously, Dollar faced unprecedented public backlash. Social media became a battleground, as former congregants, critics, and even allies debated the pastor's legacy. Videos went viral showing Dollar defending his lifestyle, while commentators and journalists dissected every aspect of the church's operations. The tension was palpable, and the narrative of infallibility surrounding Dollar's leadership began to crumble. Internally, the fallout was devastating. Key leaders resigned or were forced out. Departments that once operated seamlessly were left in disarray, and programs that had served the community began to falter. Congregants, disillusioned and confused, left in droves, seeking spiritual guidance elsewhere. The very community that had fueled Dollar's rise was fracturing before his eyes. And yet, despite this collapse, Dollar remained a figure of resilience, continuing to preach and defend his ministry. Some followers remained loyal, believing that the attacks were unfair or that God's favor still rested on him. Others, however, saw this as a cautionary tale, a reminder that unchecked ambition, wealth, and human flaws could undermine even the most seemingly divine missions. The long-term impact is still unfolding. World Changers Church International continues to operate, but the shadow of controversy lingers. Creflo Dollar's legacy is now a complex narrative, part inspiration, part cautionary tale, and part scandal. What was once a symbol of prosperity and faith has become a story about accountability, human fallibility, and the consequences of mixing faith and fortune. For the followers, the employees, and the millions who watch from afar, this saga serves as a lesson in discernment and awareness. It challenges us to look beyond appearances, question narratives, and understand that even those who seem untouchable are human, susceptible to mistakes, scrutiny, and failure. As we reflect on this story, it's clear that the rise and fall of Creflo Dollar and WCCI is more than just a church scandal. It's a study of power, trust, and the delicate balance between faith and human ambition. And while the empire may never fully recover, the lessons it leaves behind will continue to resonate for years to come.